The weather is getting colder. We've been getting a lot of snow, and winter is definitely here. And so I thought I would do a video about books to add to your winter TBR. First up, we'll start with the book Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates. This is a thriller, and it is a fast-paced, bloody story that is one of those like isolation stories that, in this case, a bus breaks down, and these people who are supposed to go on this like winter retreat end up stranded, and then turns out there's a killer amongst them, and they start being picked off one by one. So main character is Krista, who has always been anxious, but at this moment, life seems oh so hopeful with her hand in Kiernan's as the tour bus climbs this narrow road up the side of the Rockies. Blue skies turn bitterly cold mid-afternoon as a blizzard pushes the group of 8 strangers out of their bus, and they take shelter in this abandoned hunting cabin. Deep in the dark of night, their tour guide goes missing, only to be discovered the following morning with his severed head impaled on a large pine tree outside the cabin. 8 drops to 7, and it becomes clear that someone in this group is killing for sport. So this book, I thought it was a lot of fun if you like thrillers, if you like horror, if you like Darcy Coates. Super fun. However, I did and was able to guess really early on in the book who the killer was. It was very obvious to me, but I read a lot of books like this. So it may be kind of obvious to you when you read it, but it was still super fun just to see who would survive and if anyone would make it out and all of that good stuff. I had a lot of fun with it, and it's a great winter horror thriller read. All right, also, happy holidays. Why did I not say that before? Since today is Christmas, I am going to include one read that is a holiday read that is my absolute favorite. Krampus by Bram. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. Pick it up digitally today and have a nice holiday read. Bram is an amazing artist, is an amazing writer. Like, so far I've loved everything I've read by Bram. I've read 3 books. So Krampus, Slewfoot, and his newest, which was Evil and Me. So Krampus, the Yule Lord. When I first started reading this book too, like, it took me a little bit to get into it, but once I did, like, the story's so freaking good. It's so good. All right, so it's set in Appalachia. It's a twisted fairy tale about a failed West Virginia songwriter who gets ensnared on Christmas Eve in an eternal war between the not-so-saintly Saint Nick and his dark enemy Krampus, aka Black Peter, an ancient trickster demon. So on Christmas Eve, in a small hollow in Boone County, West Virginia, struggling songwriter Jesse Walker witnesses a strange spectacle: 7 devilish figures chasing a man in a red suit towards a sleigh and 8 reindeer. When the reindeer leap skyward, taking the sleigh, Devilman, and Santa into the clouds, screams follow. Moments later, a large sack plummets earthward, a magical sack that will thrust the down on his luck singer into the clutches of the terrifying Yule Lord, Krampus. But the lines between good and evil become blurred as Jesse's new master reveals many dark secrets about the cherry-cheeked Santa Claus. And half a millennium ago, the jolly old saint imprisoned Krampus and usurped his magic. Now Santa's time is running short, for the Yule Lord is determined to have his retribution and reclaim Yuletide. If Jesse can survive this ancient feud, he might have the chance to redeem himself, his family, and to save his own broken dreams, and help bring the magic of Yule to the impoverished folk of Boone County. And man, it's a wild story, and it's so good, and it's emotional and heartfelt, and it is awesome. It is my favorite holiday read. I love it so much. Okay, so another good wintry read that is an oldie but goodie is The Shining by Stephen King. If you haven't read The Shining, and you're a Stephen King fan, I definitely recommend it. It is one of my favorites. The Shining and the sequel, Doctor Sleep, are awesome. But The Shining takes place in the winter where there's a ton of snow, and it's like that whole isolation feeling. So The Shining follows the Torrance family, Jack, Wendy, and Danny. And Danny is a little boy, and he has what they call The Shining, where he can kind of speak telepathically with people, he sees ghosts, and he has just some very interesting kind of psychic abilities. His father, who is and has struggled with alcoholism severely. He ends up getting this job to take care of the Overlook Hotel. And they're going to go live there off season. And he's just going to, make sure maintenance is done around the place and that the boiler doesn't overheat and all of that stuff. So it seems like it'll be a good thing. The place is closed. There shouldn't be any alcohol there. But it is there. A lot of ghosts and bad stuff. And Jack Torrance's inner demons come to visit and maybe turn into outer demons. It's such a good, like, wintry read, and it's such a good horror classic. Like I said, if you haven't read The Shining or even seen the movie, definitely do it. Another wintry read that is one of my favorite horror books, I believe it was of 2023, was Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. And I cannot tell you how much I ranted and raved about this book. It is amazing and probably in my top 10 all time horror favorites. It's so freaking good. And it's so gut wrenching and emotional. And just, if you haven't read Philip Fracassi, such an amazing author. You should definitely check him out. And if I were to give you a place to start, I would say start at Boys in the Valley. This is about this orphanage, St. Vincent's Orphanage for Boys, early 20th century. It's in this remote valley in Pennsylvania. Here, under the watchful eyes of several priests, 30 boys work, learn, and worship. Peter Barlow is orphaned as a child by a gruesome murder, and he's made a new life here. And he approaches adulthood. He has friends, a future, a family. Then, late one stormy night, a group of men arrive at their door, one of who is really badly wounded and has occult symbols like carved all over his body. And then when he dies at the orphanage, he was possessed by a bunch of demons. We are Legion. And when he dies, they all poof, like go out of him and go into the boys. Well, not all of them, some of them. And then it kind of spreads, and then they start to take sides, and it's like a war of good versus evil. And it's a crazy book, and it's so like just emotional, and it has subject matter of like questioning your faith and the horrible things that these boys do and that they've already gone through, and like who takes up the roles of leadership and trying to fight against the bad and demon possessed children. And it's a crazy story, and it's so freaking good. I cannot recommend this book enough. Also, I do have a standalone review for this, and I'll link it down below if you want some more information on that. I have a standalone for Dead of Winter, also The Shining, because I did a revisit to it. So I'll link all those videos down below if you want to go check them out. Another really good, like, wintry read too, that's another King book, is Misery, which is the frustration of, well, let me tell you about it if you don't know what Misery is about. So it follows the story of this author. His name's Paul Sheldon. He's a best-selling novelist, and he meets his number one fan. And I think it's like he gets in a car accident, and Annie Wilkes like saves him and takes him in, but she's also like mad that the author killed off like her favorite character in his latest book. So she keeps him after she saves him, and he had like broke his leg or shattered his leg when he was in the accident. She wants Paul to write a book that brings misery back to life just for her. And she has a lot of ways to spur him on. One is a needle, and another is an axe. And if they don't work, she can get really nasty. And every time he tries to escape, maybe she freaking breaks his kneecaps. I don't know. You'll have to read the book to find out. And it takes place during the wintertime, and it is a great winter horror. All right, so this next book, this is a fantasy. It's not horror. And it's just one of my favorite wintry reads. It's so freaking magical that it's ridiculous, and it's awesome. So let me tell you the synopsis of it. Welcome to the Winter Garden. Open at 13 o'clock. You are invited to enter an unusual competition. I'm looking for the most magical, spectacular, remarkable pleasure garden this world has to offer. On the night her mother dies, 8-year-old Beatrice receives an invitation to the mysterious Winter Garden, a place of wonder and magic, filled with all manner of strange and spectacular flora and fauna. The garden is her solace every night for 7 days, but when the garden disappears and no one believes her story, Beatrice is left to wonder if it were truly real. 18 years later, On the eve of her wedding to a man her late father approved of but she does not love, Beatrice makes the decision to throw off the expectations of Victorian English society and search for the garden. But when both she and her closest friend Rosa receive invitations to compete to create spectacular pleasure gardens, with the prize being one wish from the last of the winter garden's magic, she realizes she may be closer to finding it than she ever imagined. Now all she has to do is win. And man, it's a heartfelt, emotional story. There's frustration towards the characters. The man she was gonna marry is freaking horrible. And she does end up escaping that situation. But there's a lot of like sadness that's woven throughout the story, but it's also so magical and beautiful, and it has like a very beautiful sentiment to it. Do you guys have any favorite winter reads? Doesn't matter what genre. Anything that has like, has to do with like around this time of year. Could be fantasy, could be horror, could be nonfiction. Let me know down in the comments what your faves are. And I think out of all of these, my favorite is honestly Krampus. Krampus is so good. I love Brom so much. Brom's amazing. If you haven't read Brom yet, go read Brom. If you're a fan of videos where I talk about multiple books I'm reading or have read, the next video coming up will be about that. So stick around, check it out. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.